The Supreme Court slammed Rahul Gandhi for repeatedly claiming that India gave up 2,000 square kilometer of land to China after the 2020 Galwan clash. These statements were made during his Bharat Jodo Yatra and are part of an ongoing defamation case against him. So the court questioned his claims and asked for proof. So meanwhile the BJP branded him as anti-national, and the India bloc rallied behind Gandhi, showing massive support. So to talk more on this, I have my senior colleague Puneet Nicholas Yadav with me. Thank you for joining me, Puneet. So my first question to you is, the Supreme Court, while staying the defamation proceedings, remarked that, quote unquote, a true Indian would not say all this regarding Rahul Gandhi's alleged remarks about the army. So, this triggered sharp political remarks from BJP leaders. So, how has this judicial remark intensified the political battle between BJP and Congress?
Yeah, well, you see, what the court has said, there are two comments that the court made, two oral observations while the hearing was on. The first was, as you pointed out, would a true Indian, make a statement like that? And the other was uh, basically questioning Rahul Gandhi's right to make these remarks in public or on social media, and where the court posed this question that why don't you raise this in parliament? Why do you have to raise this in social media posts? Now, so there are two statements here from the court that have kind of both of them have their own political implications. The Congress, the BJP and the NDA, of course, has latched on to the issue of the court making the oral remark about whether a true Indian would make these kind of would pose these kind of questions to the Indian Army, to the government, etc. And that is in line with what the BJP has been saying all along of Mr. Rahul Gandhi or the Congress party at large, that whatever they say is largely anti-India propaganda. They try to demoralize the forces. They don't speak well of the Indian Army, and that they are not patriotic people. That has been a consistent line of attack from the BJP directed at Rahul Gandhi, the Gandhi family, and then, of course, by extension, the Congress party. So the moment news of the court making these oral observations got out, it was quite clear that the BJP would lap them up and launch its own broadside at the Congress, and that is pretty much what has happened.
Okay, let's go and let's move on to the constitutional boundaries. Did the Supreme Court cross some sort of constitutional boundaries by questioning Rahul Gandhi's patriotism in its remarks about his China border comments, or was it justified given the sensitivity of national security matters? How does this align with judicial precedents on free speech versus national interest?
No, well, I don't. I wouldn't say crossing constitutional boundaries and things like that. See, you have to understand when a court hears a case, there are two aspects here which are important to understand. One, yes, when a court is hearing a case, there will be times when the court might make certain oral observations in order to basically get a response from either party that is appearing before them. Which could be loosely, if I were to term it, I could loosely call it a sort of cross-examination by the bench, by the judges themselves of the parties, before the court. And then, of course, the lawyers on either side would respond accordingly. That I don't think is per se a case of judicial overreach or the court going beyond its remit. what has happened in the case of Mr. Gandhi is that certain statements have been made by the court, and those statements, uh, I think the court would have known or should have known, would have had political ramifications given the political circumstances. Now, I would not want to attribute any motives to, to Justice Datta who made these remarks, but there is definitely a question for the judges and for the court to reflect upon, that they have to also uh, bear in mind the political sensitivities of what they say, even if it is in the nature of simply asking a counsel for a response, because those remarks then get lapped up by political parties. I'm not just saying the BJP, but any political party. The Congress also, when it suits them, if there's a comment, if there's an oral observation by the court which is unflattering of the government, even the Congress will lap it up. So I'm not saying that it's only a case of a judge saying something which has helped the BJP. It happens on both sides, but the nature of the oral remarks here is important and of a lot of political significance, because a court telling a leader of opposition who's been a member of parliament for the last 21 years, sort of implying that by questioning the government and by questioning what is happening at the border, you are any less of an Indian or any less of a patriot, is certainly very problematic. As is the case of the court asking the leader of opposition in Lok Sabha why you do not raise this issue in Parliament, and why are you talking about it, outside of Parliament? Because I mean, if you look back over the last 11 years, a constant complaint of the opposition has been, and of Mr. Rahul Gandhi has been, even after he formally became leader of opposition, last year, that inside Parliament they are not allowed to speak. So, their mics are switched off, the camera is turned away from them. Even if they are given a chance to speak, they are cut short. More often than not, they're not even given a chance to speak. So, as a opposition whose responsibility it is to hold the country's government to account, to ask the questions that an ordinary citizen may not have the platform to ask directly of the government. If the platform of parliament is not available to them, where do they go and ask? Why, and why should it be taboo for any, not just politician, any individual to question a government? That is the logical question to ask here, and which I hope the court will, reflect upon when it perhaps, looks back at what has happened yesterday. So those are the moot questions here. I wouldn't, as I said earlier, say that the court has crossed a constitutional boundary, but certainly a judicial one is what it appears to be.
Okay, moving on. Congress leaders and, including Priyanka Gandhi said that judges cannot decide who is a true Indian. So, how is the India bloc turning this controversy into a broader debate about judicial overreach and political victimization ahead of state elections, due this year and next year?
No, I wouldn't stretch it that far of, elections this year and next year and all of that. But certainly what has happened here is that the India bloc, as you said, has rallied behind Rahul, because this is something that, today the court has asked this question of Rahul. Tomorrow, some other opposition leader might be asked the same question. Why are you asking the government questions outside parliament? Uh, we've seen multiple cases of common citizens, activists, academics, and academicians, and even common journalists and individuals being hauled up by courts or by agencies for questioning legitimately questioning the government. We saw the Professor Mahmoodabad case just a couple of months ago. So, this is certainly, to my mind, a worrying trend within the judiciary, where your order may be something very different, but what you say orally in court uh, may paint a very different image. I mean, like, since yesterday when this court order came, the general dictum when it comes to judiciary is that the judiciary must allow its orders to speak for it instead of the judge speaking. Okay. Now, what was the order? A stay was sought on the criminal defamation proceedings that have been, initiated against Rahul Gandhi. Uh, a stay was sought from the Supreme Court, and despite the opposing counsel protesting grant of stay, the Supreme Court granted stay to Rahul Gandhi, a 3-week stay on proceedings in the case, which is going on in a trial court in Lucknow. So the order per se was in favor of Rahul Gandhi. But what has overtaken everything else and the order itself is what was said orally in the court. Because everyone now thinks that, Rahul Gandhi was taken to the cleaners by the court, so he was in the wrong. And mind you, although oral observations are not supposed to be, they aren't binding on court. They're not supposed to be factored in by a court when they are, ultimately coming to a verdict. But when the lower court, which is going to hear this matter, the defamation case, hears what the court has said of Rahul in its oral remarks, there would always be this, remote, distant possibility of the lower court judge or the subordinate court judge thinking that, okay, even the Supreme Court had, pulled up Rahul for saying this, so I should perhaps follow that lead. So it sort of muddies the case. And that is why I think the opposition uh, needs to and has brought up this issue that, it's not for the court to decide whether you are an Indian or less of an Indian or not an Indian because you're asking the government a question. You and I, as journalists, can ask the government any question we want. The Constitution gives us that right. And so, in terms of the leader of opposition, it's not just a right; it's also his responsibility to be asking the government those questions. So to say that you're being anti-India or you're not being true Indian because you're raising certain questions is certainly politically problematic, and that is, I think, what the India bloc is raising.
So, with the Supreme Court, pausing the case but using strong words, what does it mean for how far courts can go in, commenting on politics and how such remarks are used in politics and public debate in India?
Yeah, so that is essentially what this all boils down to. Uh, See, the Constitution gives you the fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a) for freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Now, that is, of course, not an absolute freedom. There are conditions, that are applied to that. But those conditions are applied not in such a blanket, in such a generous manner that speech itself becomes hampered. Okay, free speech itself becomes fettered. That is not the purpose of those restrictions on free speech which the Constitution has allowed. So when the court says something like, "Why are you not raising this here? Why are you raising it there?" or that you're perhaps less patriotic or unpatriotic, it has uh, shades of judicial overreach. And I mean, it's not just the politicians, from opposition who are very sort of uneasy with what the court has done, but even a wide section of lawyers and even former judges, some of whom I spoke to, said that it is a disturbing development, and this should not become a trend where oral observations are made raising such questions, even if the actual order might be something entirely different. So there are certainly things here that the court needs to reflect upon. And one would, of course, sincerely hope that this doesn't become part of a ongoing trend of making certain remarks which then are kind of lapped up by politicians across party lines, of course, to give it a very different color, to push in policies or laws or bills which are draconian in nature. That should not become a trend, and that is what needs to be watched out for, and be aware of.
Thank you for your time, Puneet.
Thank you.